imagine that you have a transparent brain. This is an experimental setting that came from Stanford University. It just works with a mouse brain at the moment, and the mouse brain needs to be outside its body. So let's go back to humans. Imagine that you could see your brain connections in real time. Imagine you could see how many brain connections are created, how many are dying, how many new neurons are firing. Imagine that you are sitting in front of your mirror and you are checking every day to see what's going on or off, like what the airplane pilots are doing before they take off. The goal is to be able to identify very early if something is working or not. My question to you as an audience is the following. If you had this ability, would you choose to do something about it? Or would you just sit back and enjoy the show? Let me tell you a story about my grandma. My grandma was born at a small village in Greece. The name was Pentalofos. It actually means 5 little hills. The story begins when she was 70 years old, and I was still pursuing my degree in psychology. At that stage, she started to repeat her own words. At a later stage, she started to be lost in the place that she loved, Pentalofos. At a very, very later stage, she started forgetting the faces of my father, her son. I was forgotten last. But what struck me was how is it possible that I can recognize that something is wrong, and she was getting diagnosis by a medical professional, and she could pass all the exams and all the tests with ease. So obviously something was wrong. Unfortunately, the situation is not better today. Today, according to the statistics, 75% of all dementia cases are diagnosed too late. That means that significant damage in the brain has already begun. So this gave me a vision. The vision is that what if we could have early information that could either exist at the pre-symptomatic stage, pre-symptomatic means before any kind of symptoms begin, or post-symptomatic stage, which is the early symptoms like getting lost or repeating your words. What could we do about that? These projections, one at the right and the one at the left, are also from the Alzheimer Society International. They are showing the normal curve of projections of Americans 65 plus and how the numbers are going to grow by 2050. And the blue line is with the addition of early information and how this information could be used to be able to drive some prevention. You might think that so far there is nothing you can do about dementia. I mean, why would you use early information if there is nothing you can do about it? This is simply wrong. More and more studies, including this one, are saying that if you have an early warning system, and this is the goal internationally, then you can reduce some risk factors that are actually able to delay or even prevent deterioration at the later stage. So how did we begin to investigate this early warning system? We started by using high-density electroencephalography as a rather cheap method of reading a human brain. It's cheaper compared to the functional magnetic resonance imaging and also compared to the magnetic electroencephalography. But we found out that having the patient or the subject sitting at a resting chair, it's not giving us too much information. So we moved into the next stage. We had people walking on top of a treadmill. We had people doing virtual reality simulations. And those simulations were either a walk in the park, in a virtual park, or maybe a more complex scenario like going shopping, or maybe evacuating a building in case of a fire. And the logic here was simple. The more complex the exercise, the more brain connections are needed in order to accomplish this task, and the more effort we could assess using our techniques of electroencephalography. Now, you may think that this is an easy job, right? Just to give you an indication, the number of total possible connections in the brain are more than the atoms in the observable universe, so it's not such an easy task. It took us 11 years to be able to identify and connect all dots together, and our results were later verified by independent research. Our results were that each individual brain or each individual brain's connections is like a fingerprint. So you are able to identify each and every one of you based on these brain connections with 99% accuracy. This means that the aging process is also very easy to be predicted, both normal and abnormal aging based on those kind of connections. But what does this tell us now about Alzheimer's disease? Let's start by what do we know so far. So there is no known consensus about the mechanism that is creating dementia, but there is a consensus about the consequences. So there are at least two observable consequences. One is the amyloid toxicity on the right, and the other is tau toxicity. So in plain words, brain toxicity or brain poisoning. So those are some observable consequences that are being changing depending on the stage of the disease. And my question was, what if there could be more consequences? What if there could be changes in the brain connections on even more observable performance? What about motor performance? What if aging could be translated into changes in your function, in your everyday function? We started looking again. We started looking at patients that were at the very early stages of dementia, or even before, presymptomatically, and we used every available technology today that is being used to assess any early markers. One of them is the MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. The other one is the electroencephalography, as I explained before. And then we did something that nobody had tried before. We started looking outside the brain. We started having people wired inside a virtual environment, and at the same time walking on top of a treadmill or a surface, a walking surface, as we see here. And with cameras, high motion cameras, we are trying to do motion capture. So we were observing the same group of individuals from year 0 till year 5, and we were observing how the brain is changing and how their motor performance is changing using the same set of exercises inside virtual reality. Amazing discovery. Everybody thought that we were crazy. But after 8 years of data collection, we found out that the smallest or largest differences in the brain connections themselves are actually translated into slight motor performance changes that we could actually measure. So what this meant is that there could be ways to differentiate between the normal aging and the abnormal aging process just by observing the motor performance itself. You can see at some of the graphs that there is a very distinct pattern of how a normal individual is behaving when it comes to accuracy of his motor actions to the latency, and how a person in dementia risk is showing a totally different pattern, the pattern in red. We then thought that we should take this to the next level. I mean, so far, motion capture has been performed by virtual reality equipment, $500,000 cost. What if we could do this with something as simple as the mobile phone? This is actually a screenshot from the Tango project at the early stages, so Simon might note about it. At that stage, not other scientists thought that we are crazy, but I also thought we are crazy. I mean, how can we do that? There is no way that the mobile phone can match the precision of a $500,000 equipment. But it proved that it's possible. There was new studies. It didn't take us 8 years anymore. We were almost there. So it was just a matter of transferring the knowledge and the know-how taken from the virtual reality setting into the mobile phone and try to adapt our algorithms. And we managed to develop a technology that is actually outperforming the golden standard today. And we call this technology alternative from alternative reality. And it proved to have 87 to 94% diagnostic accuracy compared to the standard, which is the amyloid scan, 75% accuracy, proteins from the spine, and the magnetic resonance imaging. What I would like to do now, I would like to show you how this technology works. basically, we made an app. Thank you. Oh, it's not finished yet. So you may not need a transparent brain. You may want to use this technology that we developed, and you might want to do it every day to check your brain, if it's working or not, without even having to stand in front of your mirror and having a transparent brain. So, thanks.